It's a pleasure to welcome you to this Alumni Online Talk, where we have the honour of hearing from our distinguished speaker, Ntsiki Mkhize, a self-published author and founder of MentHer. A beacon of empowerment and a catalyst for social change, Ntsiki wears many hats. She's a social entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, and was crowned Miss South Africa, second princess in 2015. Her passion for empowering women and driving social change is truly inspiring. Ntsiki is a visionary founder and chief social entrepreneur of MentHer, a global mentorship network that's dedicated to supporting female social entrepreneurs. MentHer provides these trailblazing women with invaluable access to mentors, networks, markets, and finance. In addition to this, Ntsiki is the founding editor of MentHer Magazine. This publication serves as a platform to share the inspirational stories of social entrepreneurs and the remarkable impact they are making on the world. Glasgow Caledonian is very proud that Ntsiki is a graduate of our institution. We are extremely grateful for her support of the university, and we are thrilled to have her back with us today to share her wisdom and experience. So, without further ado, it's my pleasure to invite Ntsiki Mkhize to deliver this afternoon's talk, after which there will be some time for questions from the audience. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ntsiki.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for the introduction, Shirley, and to you, John, as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to everyone who has made the time to join us this afternoon. I believe you guys are already in daylight savings time, so it's 6 p.m. in South Africa, but it's summer, so it's still a little sunny outside, although we've had hectic hailstorms the past couple of days. And I must say, I never understood the purpose of talking about weather until I moved to Glasgow. So coming into the space where I'm like, you can miss the sun is a very real thing. So in the time that I have with you this afternoon, I'd like to share with you a little bit about my journey as an entrepreneur, and in that as well, also my journey to how I ended up in Glasgow, and to share with you as well some of the things that have happened since then. And I hope that it will help you, whether you are a student currently trying to figure out and map out your journey, or if you're somebody who's graduated and are trying to figure out what does the journey look like for you on the other side. I hope that you'll find my story inspiring, but that you'll also get some tools and tips that you could utilize in your own experience as well. So as Dr. Shirley said, my name is Ntsiki Mkhize. I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. I run MentHer, and I speak, I facilitate, I'm an MC. I self-published a book, and for this year, I've been a contributor on one of I think the #1 station in South Africa, actually, on SAFM, speaking about personal development. And then a fun fact about me is that I'm a garlic farmer and a beekeeper, so doing my bit to save the world and make sure we have food in the future. So in starting my story, I really want to share with you what I call 10,000 hours of my experience, so the past 23 years of building what my career looks like as a speaker. You'll see there is me, November 2000, in the year 2000, I was in grade 3, and my grade 3 class was assigned the play 101 Dalmatians. And I remember at the time, I really wanted to play Anita. And one, I think I wanted to play Anita because my best friend also wanted to be Anita. But I also wanted to play Anita because no one really wants to be Cruella. Like, she's mean, right? I don't want to be the mean girl. But my teacher said to me, listen, I think you should audition for Cruella. You'd be fantastic. And I did audition and I got the role. And my hair looked like that for the entire week because my mom couldn't be bothered to wash out the dye every day because it was just so intense. But we did the play for the whole week. And I learned my lines. I got over my fear of, being mean or what will people say about Cruella, but then also just performing in front of the whole school. And that for me, I think, is where my journey kind of kick-started in terms of being somebody that is in front of people as a speaker, as a facilitator, as an MC, as a moderator. And the past 23 years for me, so the picture that you see, October 23, is where I am now and sort of the years of experience in being on stage and crafting my talent in working through my nerves. And I find people often ask, like, how did you get to here? What were the things that you're doing? So from that little girl who was on stage playing Cruella de Vil, she then went on to do school announcements and to run for prefect. And she would like do things where she had to speak in front of classes. I then joined debating and public speaking, and I did like Stepford at school where you have to like remember a poem or you do a prepared or unprepared reading, those sort of things. And I've literally done that throughout my schooling career, all the way through to Miss South Africa and so forth. And so I think what we often miss at times is the very foundational spaces where our learning happens, where we first unearth our talent and our skills. And then we miss the fact that throughout our lifetime, whether you were doing it because it's fun or because your parents made you do it, you have been building skills that are useful and that can pour into your career and where you are now. And, in this time on my journey, where I've gotten to is discovering my purpose and realizing that really my mission and what I want to do in my time on earth is to inspire, connect, and empower women and youth to be able to improve their lives and their communities. And the vehicle through which I do that is entrepreneurship. So training people and supporting people to start businesses, but also as a coach, working with people one-on-one or in teams to unlock the potential and purpose within ourselves as well, right? And I truly believe if people have a sense of meaning in what they do, then we can easily figure out the what and the how and make that happen. So just to share with you a little bit around my career. So as an entrepreneur, I've been able to, so during a hard lockdown, I was working on my dissertation. So I was at GCU studying a master's in social innovation, and my research was on the social entrepreneurship ecosystem in Gauteng, which is the province that I live in South Africa. And clearly I felt like I didn't have enough to do. So I started MentHer. And for me, a big thing was in looking at mentorship opportunities that are available for female entrepreneurs. I also run another business called the Greater You Holdings that I do my coaching through. And through my family, I've been exposed to property and farming. And those are sort of, skills that I've been learning over time. And I've had incredible opportunities as a speaker to be part of speaking conventions and speaking engagements. And I think my highlight around this is when I was in Glasgow, I got to speak at TEDx Cumber Old Women. And being back in South Africa now, I'm speaking at a TEDx on the 4th of December. And that the rest of that is just what I do in terms of a coach and mentor and the opportunities that I've had to serve as a board member in spaces that are focused around advancing entrepreneurship. And then, these are some of the clients that I've had the opportunity to work with. And I share this because I'm a big believer in a portfolio life, and we see this a lot with millennials and Gen Zs, that we don't really stay in the same job for a long time, and that you pivot and you build different opportunities around the skill set that you have. And for me, in that, it's realizing that life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So if you think about yourself and where you are now, and you think about what are the things that you gravitate towards because you're comfortable and you feel safe in them and you feel unseen and unchallenged, but it's easy because you get to play it safe. And then to say, what would happen if you shifted out of that zone just a little bit? So for anybody who's ever had to move to a foreign country, that's a bit of a push out your comfort zone. Even graduating from grade to grade or from one school to another is a push out your comfort zone. And I find that once we kind of finish matric, grade 12, I forgot what you guys call it in the UK, is that life doesn't really throw you with that many opportunities to grow. You kind of almost have to find growth. You have to put yourself in the discomfort seat of growth, right? But when you put yourself in that discomfort seat of growth, you grow a lot. And oftentimes that is outside our comfort zone. So I would like to invite you to venture outside your comfort zone and to open yourself up to the possibilities. And for me, if I look back on my journey, it's been a lot of living outside of my comfort zone. It's been a lot of constantly challenging what was normal or what I thought I could do, and constantly going, maybe I could do that. Let's see what happens. So firstly, when I was at university, before I get to university, when I was in grade 9, choosing my subjects, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go the commerce route or if I wanted to choose the sciences and so forth, I remember my dad saying to me, think about where you want to be in the future and what your life looks like. And what do you see yourself doing? And I remember going, okay, I don't want to be anywhere before 10 o'clock in the morning. I want to be able to travel. I want to decide how much money I make, and I want to know all these things. And he said to me, okay, the only way you can have that life is to be an entrepreneur. So I kind of already had that seed in my mind that I was going to be an entrepreneur. But when I got to university, I'd registered to study marketing because I wanted to open up an advertising agency. And my parents had suggested that maybe studying marketing over advertising would be a better route. And I saw a poster at the school cafeteria for somebody that was looking for a co-founder. And so I met up with this person, and they actually turned out to be my economics tutor. And at the time, we set up this business called CREAM, which stands for Creating Revolutionary Entrepreneurs and Moguls. And part of that, we set up an initiative called Young Hustler. And Young Hustler is this comic book that we started because we wanted to inspire young people to start businesses and show them that it can be easy and it can be done. And this was important for us because we knew a lot of people who didn't make it into university, or who made it in but had to drop out because they were financially excluded and couldn't afford it, or who had graduated but couldn't find jobs. And one thing all of these people had in common was the fact that they had ideas, that they knew how to problem solve. And so we thought if we could teach them how to problem solve, they can all become entrepreneurs, and that will solve the problem. So we launched Young Hustler. And I remember I wrote the script for it. I wrote out the character outlines. We found somebody to illustrate for us. And then me and my business partner sat down with a directory of every single newspaper and magazine in South Africa. And we called every single one of them to ask if they would carry our comic book. We got no's. We got no responses. We got no answers at all. Like, people just didn't pick up the phone, never mind even responding to our emails. But there was one publication that did respond to us and agreed to carry a strip of the publication or of the comic book. But what we really learned from that experience was the value of just throwing everything that you have at something and putting yourself out there and bootstrapping and believing in something and getting buy-in, right? And just the fact that there's a consistency in how you show up in doing something that leads to results. We didn't at the time end up having like this huge comic house that we thought we would have built around entrepreneurship, but it was a really good start for like 2 students in second and third year that were just still trying to graduate, but able to build this really cool project on the side. And in that time as well, I'd been working with entrepreneurs, and I knew that this was a space that I wanted to make a difference in. So I then entered Miss South Africa with the idea that I would utilize that platform to get sponsorship and support to get more young girls into entrepreneurship. And I must say, I actually entered 3 times. The first 2 times I got eliminated. And then the 3rd time I made it through, and I became Miss South Africa's second princess. And for me, that's a recurring theme in my life around tenacity, that being tenacious and being persistent does pay off. And around that same time as well, I was in different spaces networking and landed up hosting a show called Career Connect on Business Day TV. And at the same time, I was also hosting an online business show called Basic. And I was presenting the show, but I was also producing the content for the show and also translating, because I would do one show in English and then do the second show, same content in isiZulu, which is my home language, and one of the widely spoken languages in South Africa. So that's kind of stuff I was running around doing at the time. And in that season, I found that I had a lot of messages from young people, specifically young girls, on social media asking me about, how do you become successful, right? And I thought about it, and I was like, shoot, how did I get here? And I then put down those lessons and experiences in a book called My Hall of Mentors. And I specifically subtitled the book Lessons Learned Along a Journey of Success, because I really do believe that success is a journey. It's not a destination that you get to one day, but that success looks very different in different seasons in your life. Like on a day when you're just able to get your assignments in on time, that is successful. In a season where it's difficult to get out of bed, that's successful. When you are juggling a lot of things and you're able to do it well, that is successful. So being able to see success in different facets of your life, in different seasons of your life, based on the various amount of things that you could be dealing with at any particular point in time. And for me, lots of lessons that I got in this space were from some of the mentors that I have, through Miss South Africa. So I met two people through Miss South Africa. But what I also wanted to highlight is that our mentors are around us. You know, they are in everything we do. So for me, two of the chapters in the book are lessons that I learned from my parents and my grandmother as well, because looking back, I think a lot of the foundational aspects of who I am as a person, I learned from them. One of my mentors that I speak about is the first job I ever had. The CEO of that company, luckily, was a medium-sized business, so he was accessible, so I could talk to him and get insights from him. I could knock on his door; he was available. One of my mentors is one of my university professors where I studied, and so really to say that if you want to learn lessons, there are people around you right now. You don't have to be rich, famous, or playing in certain circles to access great mentors. Great mentors are around you right now, including yourself. You are also a mentor to someone. And I say that, and sometimes people feel like they have nothing to offer. But the truth is, if you are watching and you are in first year, you know so much more than somebody who is in high school. And you just giving them some advice on how to navigate high school is mentorship. You know, if you've just graduated, you know so much more than a person who's in first year. So not taking those kinds of experiences for granted. So once I published my book, I self-published because I'd spoken to a couple of publishing houses and the contracts weren't favorable. So I was like, you know what, I could actually do this by myself. So I then put on my entrepreneurship hat and I hosted my own book launch in partnership with an organization that has a circle for founders. And they hosted the venue, and I invited some of my mentors to the book launch, and those are three of the mentors that I write about. And then I was able to have the launch in Johannesburg, the city that I live in, and in Cape Town as well. And in that process, I then also called all the bookshops in South Africa. So there's some bookshops that you can get through, and they want you to be with a publishing house. And then there's independent bookstores that they're like, cool, we'll work with you. So I literally made a list of every single independent bookstore or a non-common house bookstore. And I gave him a call and I said, hey, I'm an author. Here's my book. You know, would you carry it? And if there was a bookstore that I didn't know about, or there was a bookstore that I thought, you know, maybe I could get away with it, I would walk in and ask to speak to the manager and find out if they would carry my book. So very entrepreneurial in that sense. And then I also went to literally every single woman's networking event. I would sign up for the networking events and I would ask if I could get a table and a stand so I could talk about my book. And I literally printed a banner and I'd always have a bunch of books with me wherever I went. So my entire experience selling my book was basically outside the boot of my car. But in all of this, because I was networking, I then ended up landing an interview on one of the big radio stations in South Africa, Kaya FM. And then I landed up doing an interview on live TV on one of the big afternoon shows called Afternoon Express. But all of this happened from networking, talking to people, doing the work, posting about it, all of that stuff, right? And that's to say, like, sometimes, and because I work with entrepreneurs, sometimes I see people do something really cool and they post about it once and they feel like, oh, well, I posted about it that one time, people know I'm doing it. And I'm always like, no, nobody should hype up your business as much as you do. So like talk about it as much as you can. And it feels uncomfortable, but you as the founder of your business are also the marketing for your business, right? And then in that entire journey, I then decided I wanted to do my master's, and I had actually come across GCU through a common good project that they were doing with my university here in South Africa, the University of Johannesburg. And I'd worked as a project lead on this particular project where they were looking at social enterprises in South Africa that were focused on education. So that's how I came across GCU. And I was really impressed with the kind of work that GCU does and the ethos around doing good and creating impact in the world. And I then found out that there was a program for social innovation, which I then signed up for. And it actually took me 2 years to complete my fundraising to come to GCU. So I created a GoFundMe page to get funding from people. I did apply for scholarships as well. And I also had the benefit of getting a scholarship from, I think I got a vice president scholarship. I forgot what it was called, but I got one of those. So I ended up at GCU September 2019, which was really fantastic. It was literally the coldest I have ever been. So if you are from a sunny country, like the shock of being in cold Glasgow is quite interesting. And then, fun fact, I have never been to the hospital for anything. And in the first week of being in Scotland, I lost a fight with an onion and ended up at the Royal Infirmary. So that's me with my cause. And I still don't quite have feeling in my thumb, but it's okay. Apologies, it's like the sound going off here in the back. I'm not sure what's happening there. And then, because one of the things that I wanted to do whilst being in Glasgow was to grow my career as a speaker and create an international speaker profile, I then found, so in South Africa, and this is an organization that exists globally, called the Professional Speakers Association. So I found the exact same branch in Glasgow, and luckily for me, they were actually meeting within the first month that I was there. So I then went through to one of their meetings. And while I was there, I met this wonderful lady named Wendy, who is from Stirling, and we became really good friends. And Wendy happened to know the lady who is or was working on putting together TEDx Cumbernauld Women. So I ended up speaking at TEDx Cumbernauld. And then I obviously took some books with me. So I had a book launch and was able to sell books while there as well. And I also became a avatar, which was fun. And one of the things that I did while I was in Glasgow as well was to really plug into the entrepreneurship scene as well and find out what was happening on the ground, find out how women were being supported. And I went to an event that was hosted by one of the banks and I met entrepreneurs there. And I found it interesting that in South Africa, people had challenges around entrepreneurship and mentorship. And the same thing came out when I was in Scotland as well. So people were saying, we need mentors. We're struggling to find mentors. Where are the mentors? And also around finances and starting businesses as well. And kind of the question I then started asking myself is, there's so many experts and there's venture capital and angel investors. Why is it that these people are struggling to connect with entrepreneurs, or why are founders feeling isolated or struggling to connect with help? And that being the question that I was trying to answer, I then decided to set up MentHer, and we are a global mentorship network that supports female social entrepreneurs, specifically in the ideation stage or seed stage. So really helping people who just want to start, right? And this was a big thing that also came out for us during the pandemic, that really realizing that the backbone of society in South Africa and in lots of parts of Africa is women, right? That they run childcare facilities that might not be registered, but everyone knows they can leave their children with that particular lady, or they run soup kitchens or any kind of volunteer organization which wasn't able to operate during the lockdown. And we wanted to look at how do we support these women to take the idea that they have to address a particular social issue and to shift that into a space where they can create sustainability for themselves, to be able to earn a salary, to be able to continue to be there for their beneficiaries, but ideally to be able to shift even their beneficiaries from beneficiaries to customers, right? And that should be the end result of social entrepreneurship, that society overall is becoming better. And so with the intent to inspire, connect, and empower, we then created a podcast and a magazine. In connecting, we connect female entrepreneurs with each other and with experts as well, so they can get mentorship support. And then from an empower aspect, hosting masterclasses and masterminds with experts, having our mentor sprint, which is an online accelerator that we run, and our annual social impact summit that we have every year. And all of this with the objective of providing access to mentors, access to networks, access to markets, and ultimately access to funding, and specifically in that order, because the belief is that if you have good quality mentors and advisors that can guide you on creating a good business, you can then move on to the next step and through them get access to networks, get to the markets that you need to be in, with funding being the last step, right? And that you really can do a lot just by bootstrapping. And I want people to know that you can go into business if you don't have all the funding, right? That don't play on the sidelines waiting for funding. Yes, sometimes funding is necessary, especially if you're doing a capital intensive venture, if you're going into agriculture, if you're going into certain kinds of tech that require specific dev, if you're going into property, for example, those are all things that require large capital outlay up front. But there's a lot of other things that you can do from the beginning without that kind of funding. So in terms of getting started with mentors, I think, well, I have this idea, but I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if people actually even care about this. So the first thing I did, and this was still in Glasgow just before the pandemic hit, I called together a couple of friends and entrepreneurs that I knew, and I asked them to bring along a friend, and I hosted a focus group. And these are the questions that I had outlined before the focus group. And we went into a deep dive discussion on, should this be an academy or a network? Do you care about the themes of inspiring, connecting, being empowered? What are your personal needs as an entrepreneur? If we created a digital platform to help you connect with other entrepreneurs and with mentors, what would you want from the platform? Does this make sense to you? In this way that it's worded, does it make sense to you? I had a long conversation, even asking about, how would you pay for this? How much would you expect to pay? And really getting really good feedback from this research focus group. And that was really the first step in starting. And then developing our MVP. So I actually left Glasgow like a week before. So the Friday, I don't know if you guys remember that Friday when the emails went out to say, don't come to class on Monday. That Saturday, I was like, well, let me head home because, this seems like it's about to be something. And so I came home and literally all I did is I got a friend to design a logo for me and I printed a banner and this was my first kind of day of operating. But then I posted this on LinkedIn and I said, hey guys, I'm starting this business and we're focusing on mentorship support for female entrepreneurs. And that post got 11,000 engagements on the post with people saying, hey, I'll be a mentor. I'm happy to support. And then with people equally going, how do we become part of this network, right? So figuring out very quickly what is the minimum viable product that you can offer that people are interested in, that people are willing to pay for, that people are happy to engage with you on that particular thing. And then once I did that, I then also got feedback. So a lot of what we had to do when I started was realizing that people didn't really know what social entrepreneurship is. And in some instances, people didn't actually self-identify as a social entrepreneur. So we had to go, how do we educate people and have conversation spaces to get people started? So we put up posts on our Instagram page asking people, we're hosting IG Live. What time do you want us to host it? What platform do you want to host it on? Which day of the week? And that's what we did. So for the first year, every Friday, 6 p.m., we would have an IG Live and we would talk about social impact, social innovation, social entrepreneurship, and how do we solve to create impact in our communities. And then the next thing for me was to start within your network. So I didn't find a bunch of people that I've never met before. From that post on LinkedIn and from looking in my own personal network at people that I knew, these were all the topics that I knew someone that was an expert in, whether they were a coach in that space, whether they worked in that space, whether they were a lecturer in that space, or had started a business in that space. I found people who could speak on these topics and asked them to come in and host master classes for our entrepreneurs. And it also just happened that they were across different countries as well. And also part of these are one of my lecturers at GCU came on board, which is fantastic. And one of the friends that I studied with at GCU. So really look at your network and who's in that space and how they can connect with you. And then I went online, I literally Googled how to start a mentorship business. And I found this booklet called How to Build a Successful Mentoring Program. And this is based on a community mentorship program for youth, I think, in the US. But there's a lot of very helpful tools that I found in this book. And then I utilized like a flow canvas thing and I built a mentor academy online just to go through our flow canvas. And then I did an online course on how to onboard a virtual community if you're creating a community of people. So there are a bunch of free resources that you can find and use online to help you start your business. And since then, we've got a growing network of mentors. We have 170 female entrepreneurs in our network across the continent. For our magazine, we've published 8 issues and it's a quarterly publication, but we haven't put anything out this year, and that's gone out to 10,000 readers. And we've hosted 2 social impact summits, and we've had, so every year we put out a social impact founders list celebrating female founders. So literally just an idea that I had while studying and then being able to build a business around it has been really great. And where we are now is pivoting out of that and going, okay, how do we shift from providing mentorship to creating access to networks, markets, and funding. So I'd like to pause here that if you would like a copy of our magazine, any of the issues, they are available on our website, and you can actually read them. You can read individual articles on our website, which is www.menther.co.za. But if you'd like us to send you an issue directly to your email, then just pop us an email at magazine@menther.co.za. And those are the issues that we've put out over the past 2 years, which I'm really proud of. Like, it's really great to see the work that you do, but also to have people really engage with it and enjoy the content. So before I close off, I want to share with you some tips for your own growth as you think about what your journey looks like and how it's going to unfold on your side. As firstly, find your sweet spot. So take some time this weekend and ask yourself this question: what am I good at? Like, what are the things that you are naturally gifted in? What are you talented at doing? What is places where you volunteered, work experience that you had, everything that you know how to do? What are you good at doing? Then ask yourself, what do you love to do, right? What you're passionate about is very different to the next person, and that counts for something. So make a list of all the things that you love to do, and then make a list of things that the world needs, right? So when are those moments when you find yourself going, why hasn't anybody solved for this? Or how do we make this better? Or wouldn't it just be great if we could do this, right? And that is to say, there's value in your perspective. How you see things is different, and therefore you problem solve differently. And then finally asking, what can you get paid for? Who has your money? And in there is your sweet spot, or what the Japanese call your ikigai. There's something that you know how to do, that you love to do, that the world needs, and someone is willing to pay you for. And for me as an entrepreneur, I really believe building this into your business so that when you wake up every day, you're working on a business that you enjoy and that people want to engage with. And then secondly, get mentworking, right? So find mentors, network with people. So yes, you can get a coach, and that's somebody to help you on a weekly or a daily basis, but specifically to move towards a certain target. And then you can get sponsors, and these are people that can open the door for you in terms of where you want to go. And you might not really speak to your sponsor that often, but mentors are people who, as John C. Crosby says, that a mentor is a brain to pick, an ear to listen, and a push in the right direction. So finding those people that can kind of have a helicopter view of where you are and where you want to go, and help you figure out how to navigate that, and to add value to your network. Like, there are incredible mentors and sponsors in your network. So who are your family and friends? Where do they work? What do they do? Who's that rich auntie that shows up and you have no idea what their job is? Find out, because that is valuable, right? And then look inside your community as well. So within your community, looking at where do you volunteer? Where do you worship? Where do you play? Where do you do sports? All of those things. Find out within your community, what do they do? Where do they work? And they could be great mentors in that space. And then in your work, like wherever your job is, even if you're at university, so at GCU, who are the different lecturers, even the different guest lecturers, not just in your own department, but in other departments as well, right? Like, maximize the network, even the UJ alumni, like who's alumni at school that you can connect with. And then your industry, that's globally. So in the space, in the field that you're in, ask Google, like, who are the leading XYZ in this industry? And then I've put there a perfect stranger, because I do believe that on this journey, you do meet the perfect stranger. Right? Sometimes somebody hears about you through somebody else, and it just creates reciprocity. And the point is, the more you network, the more connection points you create, which help you, whether you're growing your career and you want the right people to know about you and the value that you add, or whether you're building a business and you're wanting to connect as you grow your business. Networking is important across the board. And then my final tip is around optimism, that, the journey can be challenging, it can be difficult. So how do you exercise optimism? And this is a tool available from 6 Seconds. And these are the 3 bridges of optimism. So when you are facing whatever difficult challenges, when you're really stressed out, when you're feeling really, anxious about the future, is thinking about how do you shift from looking at things being permanent, pervasive, and feeling powerless, to understanding that things are actually temporary, being able to isolate an issue and understand that there's effort possible on your part. So firstly, you would ask yourself in that situation, how long is this problem going to last? So there was definitely a point when COVID felt like it was going to be here forever. But like there was going to be a permanent situation. But it was important to remember that there was a time that there wasn't any COVID, right? So it's not going to be a forever thing. It feels implausible in the moment, but being able to understand that things are temporary and things do change in time is very helpful in isolating the stress. And so just being able to say, this will pass at some point. I don't know when, but I'm going to figure out how to move forward. And tomorrow's a new day that presents new opportunities. And then secondly is asking yourself, how widespread is this problem? So sometimes things aren't as pervasive as we think they are. So just because you had a bad report for one subject doesn't mean your entire day should be ruined. Or just because, you had a really bad meeting doesn't mean the rest of your day is bad or that your life is falling apart, right? Learn to isolate issues. And then finally, in moments when you feel powerless, instead of feeling like, this is my fault, I could have done this better, is to go, okay, but what can I do? What is within my control to change the situation, to create impact, to make a difference, and then do that. No matter how small that step is, take the little bit of control that you can to make a difference. And I like to leave you with these words from Zig Ziglar, and he says that you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start in order to be great. So for those of you who know you want to start a business, but you're feeling anxious or nervous and you're sitting on the sidelines, it doesn't have to be perfect. Steve Jobs talks about how one day you'll look back and the dots will connect, but you do have to start, right? And it's only in starting that you figure out how things come together. And yes, there's also planning you can do, but don't get analysis paralysis where you're just stuck on planning and you're not actually doing. So it's great to talk about what we're going to do, but it really takes bravery to do it. And just jump, just do it and it will come together. And from Little Miss Cruella DeVille, thank you so much. I'm going to stop here and just say it's been an absolute pleasure to spend the afternoon with you. And I know there are some questions, so I'm going to stop sharing and get Shirley back on the screen to facilitate Q&A.
Thank you very much, Ntsiki. That was a really, really interesting talk, a very comprehensive outline of a fascinating career. So I thank you very much for that. I'm sure everyone has enjoyed it. Now, listen, I would love to know much more about beekeeping. However, I think the audience wants to ask a little bit more about the things, particularly around your comfort zone. And I think you've inspired some questions around that. Now, I really loved your point around life begins outside your comfort zone. So some of the questions some of our audience are asking about how you built the courage to do what you've done, how you overcome nerves, how you overcome the fear of failure. So can you talk us through what the answer is to overcoming those things?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do around coaching is based on neuroscience. So first, I want to let you know that your brain is wired to keep you safe. So anytime you do something that is terrifying, your primal brain function, your reptilian brain is telling you, no, 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 don't do it, right? Because it wants to keep you safe. So the non-nice answer is to say you just have to do it, right? So you have to just do it. And if you fail, that's fine, but you have to fail and realize you're not going to die, right? There's nothing bad that happens from failing. You just fail. Maybe your ego gets bruised. Maybe you feel disappointed. And then what you learn over time is how to fail forward and how to grow from failure. And really what you have to be comfortable in doing is building a portfolio of evidence that you can perform. And in the spaces where you haven't performed, you've learned how to do better and how to grow and move forward from that. And in terms of nerves, I want to say to you, there's a time when you're never going to be nervous. That's not necessarily true, so you do it and then you get comfortable. You're like, I did undergrad, that was fine, so second year of undergrad is probably less nerving than first year. But then you go on to do your honors, and then you're like, oh, shucks, I'm so nervous about this. But then you get over it, right? And then you go on to do your masters. So it's almost like each new level that you go to presents new things for you to be nervous about. But what you have is the fact that you've overcome everything else leading up to that point, and therefore you can have confidence that somewhere in you is the ability to overcome this new frontier of whether it's an opportunity, whether it's a challenge, whether it's a new space that you haven't been exposed to before. You are competent enough to learn and to navigate that space. So those nerves are okay because they help you. I like to think about it as fire underneath you that gets you going.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's about building resilience by just going out there and doing it, because each time it gets easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's really helpful. So we've got another question around the development of MentHer and what challenges you faced along the way and what you did to overcome them.
So I think our biggest challenge definitely was building during the pandemic because our business is based on a membership model. And what we found was that specifically for the kinds of entrepreneurs we were supporting, there was a huge opportunity cost for their money. So people didn't want to spend 10, 20 pounds on membership because they were like, I might need this on something else because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to get retrenched. And if they were already retrenched, they were like, I don't know when my next pay is coming from. So even though that was a challenge, and therefore the first year that we operated, we didn't charge membership fees, it gave us the opportunity to build a captive community. So because everyone was home and everybody was online, that made it easy for us to have a global online community, which I do think would have been more difficult to build if people's attention was split doing the things that we did normally on a day-to-day basis before then. So that was a big thing. And then from understanding what the product was about was having to teach people that social entrepreneurship is a type of business you can have. And if you're problem solving, then you should care about being a social entrepreneur. And then that led to a lot of what we initially had to do, being education and lobbying and getting people to see the space as something that they wanted to play in and to self-identify as that. And then I think the third thing was also working with people who were survival entrepreneurs. So I'm just an entrepreneur for now because of what's currently happening in the world, but I might not stay here. So we've had like shifts in who our market is over time, but it's also helped us to understand a lot in terms of when people start businesses and turn ideas into businesses, what are some of the challenges that they face, which has helped us be more proficient in our offerings. So not having that stability was a challenge, but I think in it as well, we were able to find other elements of learning that actually in the long run have turned out to be more helpful.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. We've got another question from our audience, which is around your experience of being mentored yourself. And so what is it that was possibly most important in your career so far that came from your experience of being mentored?
So definitely the lessons that I've learned from my mentors. So I have industry-specific, skill-specific mentors, and then I have holistic mentors. So mentors that I went to go find, and I was like, I know one day I want to be a successful businesswoman that has a family and has good mental health, that I believes in a certain way, lives my life in a certain way. And I went and I found women who modeled that in their own lives to get guidance from them. And I remember asking one of those ladies who is, senior executive, very successful mom, wife, and going, how do I create this balance in my life? Because I don't want to be off balance. And I remember her saying to me, there's no such thing as balance. In life, you just have to think about things as having a glass ball and a rubber ball. And things that are a rubber ball, if you drop this ball, it'll bounce back in a week, in a month, in a couple of months, maybe in a couple of years, but at some point it will bounce back. And the things that are glass balls, if you drop this, it can shatter, it can break, but it might never be able to come together again. And all she said to me was, there's nothing wrong with focusing on the rubber ball, just make sure you don't drop the glass ball in the process. And I think this is a conversation I had when I was 23. So at 23, having that kind of advice is something that has really helped me to model my life in a way where I never sacrifice my health at the expense of being successful, because I know, if I can't show up to do it, then it doesn't matter what the work is. I'm not in a position to do it because I'm not healthy or I'm burnt out or whatever it is. And that's really one of the lessons that has stuck out for me. And then something else from one of my other mentors was the fact that you create your own luck. So literally by the virtue of building up your proficiency, building up your skills, getting better at what you do, talking to people around you, there's a combination of your experience and opportunity that it looks like luck to a lot of people, but it's actually you've been on this path for a long time. So yes, you might not know when it's going to come together and it might feel lucky, but you really have been working. And that for me has been a strong motivator when it comes to remaining persistent and consistent on my journey.
That's really interesting. So your advice is in terms of finding mentor, that all of that was really interesting, and it's about making sure that it's aligned to your own ambition, that your mentor that you seek out are actually right for you. And I suppose it goes back to the nerves that some people would be potentially afraid of asking someone. So what was your experience of just asking, will you be my mentor? Do you get knockbacks?
So,
is it something we should all just do?
Absolutely. And it is terrifying because we don't, as human beings, we don't want to be rejected, but you really have to learn that rejection isn't personal. So if I have to ask Shirley now to be my mentor, you might be supervising 10 PhDs and you just don't have the capacity. It's nothing personal. You literally just don't have the capacity. So firstly, a pro tip is don't say, Shirley, will you be my mentor? Because that's a yes/no question, right? But if I say, hi, Shirley, I'm actually thinking about doing a PhD myself, and I know you've worked with students in this space, and this has been your career, so I think you could help me because of these particular things. I was wondering, could I pick your brain on my topic, and if that's something you'd be interested in? And if not, is there someone else you could refer me to? So having a conversation around the mentorship journey than just having a yes/no question is a lot better. It also helps the person see that you've done your research in terms of why are you approaching me to be your mentor and the depth of thought that you've given to your topic. So the difference between going, Shirley, I want to do my PhD. Could you help me think about a topic? Versus going, hey, I know this is your discipline. This is what I'm thinking topic wise. Could you help me flesh out some aspects around that? And I think those things go a long way. So if you've done the work and you phrase your question as a conversation that shows that you've reflected, that goes a lot further than just saying, will you be my mentor?
That's very good advice, and more than happy if you want to come back and do your PhD at Glasgow Caledonian. So the door's always open. So we've got another question from the audience of somebody that's mid-career. So obviously you've talked a lot about people that are early career. So and what's your experience and thoughts around somebody who's feeling like they might need a mentor, albeit they've got lots and lots of experience? What's different about mentoring later on in your career?
So the nice thing about mentoring later on in your career is that the mentoring can be very specific. So when you're starting out, you're still trying to figure out where you want to go. Whereas when you're mid-career, you can specifically say, I want to be X-Go on this particular board, or I want to be a C-suite executive in this particular space, or I want to research and work on these kinds of topics specifically and nothing else. So you have greater specificity in what you want to do with your career going forward. And you can also kind of look back and go, oh, I've already done these things. I'm not quite interested in them. Or I didn't really have the opportunity to explore this and I would like to find out more about it. So doing that is really helpful, and finding mentors within a particular stream or a very specific niche that can help you is good. And then also I think reverse mentorship as well. So I know for some people it's like, if you work in tech, for example, if you're Microsoft and you're mid-career, you know a lot about tech, so you don't need a Gen Z to come and teach you about social media. But you could look at things that might be blind spots for you that you don't know that other people might be able to teach you, and those could be peers. And this is for everybody. That your mentors can be peers, they can be younger than you, they can be older than you. It's just somebody who's steps ahead of you in the space that you want to develop or the discipline that you want to improve on.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. We've got another question around networking. So, what's your advice? Because it's another challenging part of your world, and not everyone feels comfortable or knows how to start doing that. So what sort of advice would you give people who are thinking they should be networking and how to start?
Yeah, so networking is so important. I can't overemphasize this fact, but introverts and extroverts. So please don't assume that extroverts are better networkers just because they are bubbly and have personality. So when you're thinking about networking, you really want to think about value add and value creation. So you can go into a space and talk to just one person, but that could be a pivotal conversation. Malcolm Gladwell talks about this. I forget the two words that he uses, but he talks about networking where you provide information. So you can become the kind of person, and this is probably great if you're an introvert, the kind of person who reads a lot about a lot. So anytime I go into a conversation and somebody tells me what they do, I can go, oh, hey, did you see the research that was done by so-and-so on this topic? How fantastic. And the second one could be a connector. So when you network with people, you go, oh, you're working on this, you should speak to so-and-so. And by the time you leave, you've thought about a couple of different people that you could connect that individual to. The point is, whether you're sharing information or sharing connections, you are becoming someone to the other person that adds value, right? And even if you think about those two things and you're not feeling comfortable about either, something as small as just having empathy, you know? So a student might come into GCU and be like, you know, Dr. Rate is perfect. She doesn't need anything from me. But maybe no one's asked you, how are you feeling about your career with all these accomplishments? Like, is there anything else you'd still like to do? And maybe no one's ever asked you that question, you know? So being curious and having empathy for people goes a long way. And empathy is really the thing that allows us to connect as people. So don't ever look at somebody and think, they're so far accomplished, there's nothing I can offer them. There's always some value that you bring to the table, and to really just see yourself as valuable, and to know that no matter how young you are, no matter what your field of learning is, there are ways to connect with people and to collaborate and to even just give feedback that other people find valuable and could really use that. So start thinking about, you know, how you show up in those spaces. And then very important, I would even say, if you're clear about what you want to do with your career or your business, that you actually create a network map for yourself. So you start thinking about who are the kinds of people you might not know who the person is, but if you know this is where you want to go with your research or your studies or your career, who are the rooms that you want to, which are the rooms that you want to be in? And once you've identified the rooms or the companies you want to work with or the kinds of platforms you'd like to be on, then you can start finding the people in those rooms and then network with them. But having a roadmap that you'd like to follow is really helpful.
That's really interesting and helpful. A roadmap's it's a good way of thinking about it. So that's good. We're nearly at the end, so I'm just going to ask you one last question, which I think is an appropriate question to finish on, which is, what's the next big step for you, and what do you hope to achieve in the coming year?
Sure, that's a good one. It's also a challenging one. So next step for us is to really shift into a space where we can connect entrepreneurs across the continent with funding. So we've really spent 3 years understanding the challenges that people have and understanding the gaps between seed stage impact investors and where entrepreneurs on the continent are. So we would like to be able to bridge the gap. So that is what I'm currently working on. So I'm excited about that. So that's the next step with the business. That's also a personal next step because I'm learning a lot on tech and how we bridge that particular gap. And then I do want to come back and do my PhD. So that's another next big step for me as well that I'm going to be exploring.
Well, you're again always welcome. So that's good. That's good to hear. So I'm really pleased that we've had this time together and that we've had a great audience to listen to what you've had to say today, Ntsiki. It's been a fascinating talk. I think there's been a lot of inspiring comments you've made throughout the hour with us, but I think for me, the idea of seeing success in many facets is probably one that resonates with everyone. So I think that's a really nice takeaway, that you should recognize yourself, the little things that you achieve on a day-to-day basis, whether you're a student or whether you're in business or whatever you're doing, I think is really nice. So I appreciate that. But we need to bring this to a close, so it really is for me to say thank you again for such an inspiring talk, fascinating insight into the life and work of a true social entrepreneur. So as a university, I can speak on behalf of the university to say that we are very proud and grateful for your time today. And I thank you, everyone in the audience that's made time to come along. So thank you.